The morning Isaac Thorn found himself standing at the edge of the orc trading camp with 40 silver coins in his pocket and nothing left to lose. He realized his life had become a story people would tell to scare their children into making better choices. He was 28 years old and had been alone on his deceased father's farm for 3 years, watching the fields grow wild because one man could not possibly work 100 acres by himself. The neighboring farms had stopped offering help after the first winter. When it became clear, Isaac had no money to pay workers and no prospects of ever getting any. His father had died owing debts to half the county, and Isaac had spent every copper he could scrape together just keeping the land from being seized. He had sold the good horses, the breeding sow, most of the chickens, and his mother's wedding ring. He had exactly 1 milk cow left, a dozen scrawny hens, and a plow horse so old it wheezed when it walked. What he needed was a wife. Someone strong who could help with the endless work, who could keep a house while he worked the fields, who could make the farm viable again. But no woman in the valley would marry him. He had nothing to offer except debt and hard labor, and there were plenty of men with better prospects. So he had come to the border camp, where the orc clans traded with humans brave or desperate enough to do business with them. The war had ended 5 years ago, but the peace was fragile and fraught with suspicion. Humans still saw orcs as monsters. Orcs saw humans as treacherous and weak. But here in the neutral zone, commerce happened anyway, because survival mattered more than pride. The camp sprawled across a cleared section of forest, with canvas tents and wooden stalls arranged in rough rows. Orcs displayed furs, weapons, herbs, and game meat. A few humans sold grain, cloth, and metalwork. And in the back corner, there was a tent where orc women stood in a line, each wearing a simple leather collar with a price tag hanging from it. Isaac's stomach turned as he approached. The practice was legal in the borderlands, though most people pretended it did not exist. Orc clans sometimes sold their daughters or sisters if they were considered too weak, too strange, or too troublesome to keep. The women had no say in the matter. They were property until someone bought them, and then they belonged to whoever paid. It was barbaric. Isaac knew that. But he was out of options, and at least this way the woman would have food and shelter. That was better than starving alone, was it not? The orc merchant was a massive male with scars across his green-skinned face and tusks that jutted from his lower jaw like daggers. He looked Isaac up and down with obvious disdain. "You want to buy?" the merchant asked in heavily accented human speech. "Maybe," Isaac said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I am a farmer. I need someone strong who can work." The merchant grunted and gestured to the line of women. There were 6 of them, all different ages and builds. Most stared at the ground. One glared at Isaac with pure hatred in her yellow eyes. "That one is trouble," the merchant said, pointing to the angry one. 70 silver. That one is young but stupid. 30 silver. That one, he continued down the line, listing prices and flaws like he was selling livestock. Isaac's gaze kept returning to a woman at the end of the line. She was tall, maybe 6 feet, with broad shoulders and muscular arms. Her skin was a deep forest green, and her black hair was braided in a long rope down her back. She had the small tusks characteristic of orc women, just barely protruding from her lower lip. But what caught Isaac's attention was her eyes. They were amber-colored and filled with a strange mixture of resignation and defiance, as if she had accepted her fate but refused to be broken by it. "That one?" Isaac asked. The merchant's expression shifted. "Ah, that one is 40 silver. She is strong, good worker, but she has a rule." "A rule? She will work, she will obey, but she says any man who buys her must agree to one rule. She will not say what it is until after purchase." The merchant shrugged. I tell buyers this so there is no dispute later. Most will not take the risk. But she has been here 2 months now, and I am tired of feeding her. Isaac studied the woman more carefully. She met his gaze without flinching, and he saw intelligence there, not the dull acceptance some of the others showed. "What is your name?" Isaac asked her directly. The merchant started to object, but the woman spoke first. "Grisha," she said. Her voice was lower than a human woman's, with a slight rasp to it. "And you should not buy me. I am more trouble than I am worth." "Why do you say that?" "Because it is true. I was cast out of my clan for refusing to marry the chief's son. I am stubborn and I speak my mind. The rule I have will seem strange to you, and you will regret agreeing to it." Despite her words, there was something almost hopeful in her eyes, as if she wanted him to buy her anyway. Isaac considered this. He had 40 silver coins. This woman Grisha was strong enough to help with heavy labor, and she was honest enough to warn him away. That counted for something. "What if I agree to your rule?" he asked. "Then I will work harder than any human woman could," Grisha said. "I will not complain, I will not run away, and I will help you with whatever you need. But the rule is not negotiable." It was insane. Isaac knew that. But looking at Grisha, he felt something he had not felt in years, a flicker of hope. Maybe she was trouble. Maybe her rule would be impossible. But at least she had spirit, and that was more than he had seen in his own reflection lately. 40 silver, Isaac said to the merchant, pulling out his coin purse. The merchant's eyes widened slightly, as if he had not expected anyone to actually buy Grisha. He counted the coins carefully, bit one to test it, then nodded. "Done. She is yours." He unlocked the collar from Grisha's neck and handed it to Isaac. "Keep this if you want to resell her later." Isaac took the collar but immediately dropped it in the dirt. "I will not need it." Grisha's eyes widened slightly, but she said nothing. "Come on," Isaac said to her. "It is a half-day's walk back to the farm." They left the camp in silence. Isaac led the way down the forest path, very aware of Grisha walking behind him. She moved quietly for someone so large, her footsteps barely making a sound on the leaf-covered ground. He wanted to say something, to break the awkward tension, but he had no idea what to say to a woman he had just purchased like a sack of grain. After an hour of walking, Grisha finally spoke. "You did not ask what the rule is. I figured you would tell me when you were ready. You are not afraid I will demand something impossible?" Isaac glanced back at her. "If it is truly impossible, we will figure something out. I am not in the habit of going back on my word." Grisha was quiet for a long moment. "My rule is this. You must never touch me in anger. Not once. Not even if I disobey you or fail at a task or burn your dinner. No striking, no grabbing, no violence of any kind toward me." She paused. "If you break this rule, I will leave, and I will take nothing with me. That is all I ask." Isaac stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "That is it. That is your rule." "Yes." He almost laughed, but the serious expression on her face stopped him. "Grisha, I would never strike you anyway. My father never raised a hand to my mother, and I was taught the same. You have my word I will never hurt you." For the first time, Grisha's stern expression softened slightly. "Then we have an agreement." They continued walking, and Isaac found himself relaxing a bit. The rule made sense now. Grisha had probably been mistreated before, either by her clan or by the merchant who sold her. She needed to know she would be safe. That was not so strange at all. The farm came into view as the sun was beginning to set. It was not much to look at: a small wooden house with a sagging porch, a barn that needed repairs, and fields that were more weeds than crops. Isaac felt a flash of embarrassment seeing it through Grisha's eyes. "It is not much," he admitted, "but the house is sound and the well water is clean." "You will have your own room." Grisha looked around slowly, taking in the property. "You work this alone?" I have been trying. It is not going well. I can see that. She walked over to the nearest field and crouched down, examining the soil. This land is good, it has just been neglected. With two of us working, we can bring it back. The simple confidence in her voice made something loosen in Isaac's chest. He had not realized how much he needed to hear someone say that the situation was not hopeless. "Come inside," he said. "You must be hungry." The house interior was sparse but clean. Isaac had kept up with the basic housework, though he was not particularly good at it. There was a main room with a fireplace, a small kitchen area, and 2 bedrooms. He showed Grisha to the smaller bedroom, which contained only a simple bed and a chest. "This is yours," he said. "I know it is not much, but it is more than I had at the camp," Grisha interrupted. She set down the small bundle of belongings the merchant had given her. "Thank you." Isaac nodded awkwardly. "I will make dinner. Do you eat the same things as humans?" "Mostly." "We need more meat, but I can manage on whatever you have." Dinner was a simple affair: bread, cheese, and some leftover stew Isaac had made 2 days ago. They ate in silence at the small wooden table. Isaac kept stealing glances at Grisha, still not quite believing that she was real, that she was here, that he was not alone anymore. "Tomorrow we should assess what needs to be done first," Grisha said, breaking the silence. "The barn roof has holes. That should be repaired before the next rain, or you will lose whatever supplies you have stored there." "I know, I just have not had time to do everything." "Now you have help." She met his eyes. "That is why you bought me, yes. So tell me what you need and I will do it." Isaac swallowed. "I need a lot of things. The fields need to be cleared and plowed. The fence around the vegetable garden is falling apart. The chicken coop needs to be expanded if we want more hens." He stopped himself. "I am sorry, you just got here, you should rest." "I am orc," Grisha said flatly. "We do not need to rest as much as humans. Give me a task and I will do it. That is our agreement." "The agreement is that you help me, not that you work yourself to death," Isaac said firmly. "We will start tomorrow and we will figure it out together. For tonight, just settle in. This is your home now, too." Grisha looked surprised by that, as if the idea of having a home had not occurred to her. She nodded slowly. "All right." After dinner, Isaac showed her where everything was: the well, the barn, the tool shed. The sun had fully set by the time they finished, and the spring night was cool. Inside the house, Isaac banked the fire and bid Grisha good night before retreating to his own room. He lay awake for a long time, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of another person moving around the house. It had been so long since he had not been alone. The reality of what he had done was starting to sink in. He had bought a person, an orc woman who had been sold by her own clan. It did not matter that he had good intentions, the whole situation was built on something wrong. But what else could he have done? Let her stand in that camp until someone worse bought her. At least here she would be treated with respect. At least here she would be safe. He hoped she would see it that way too. The next morning, Isaac woke to the sound of someone chopping wood. He dressed quickly and went outside to find Grisha in the yard, splitting logs with an axe. She had already created a sizable pile of firewood, and she was not even breathing hard. "You are up early," Isaac said. "I am always up early." Grisha set down the axe. "I thought we might need wood." "Your pile was low." "Thank you." Isaac stretched, feeling the ever-present ache in his shoulders. "Let me make breakfast and then we can start on the barn roof." They fell into an easy routine over the next few days. Grisha was as strong as she had promised, able to lift and carry things that would have taken Isaac twice as long to move. She learned quickly and never needed to be told something twice. But more than that, she seemed to genuinely care about the work. She took pride in fixing things properly, in making improvements beyond the bare minimum. Isaac found himself relaxing around her. Grisha had a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard, and she was surprisingly easy to talk to. In the evenings, after the work was done, they would sit by the fire and share stories. Isaac told her about growing up on the farm, about his parents, about the valley before the war. Grisha told him about Orc clan life, about the harsh rules and expectations, about why she had refused to marry the chief's son. He was cruel, she said simply. He took pleasure in hurting those weaker than him. When he decided he wanted me as his wife, I knew I could not accept. My mother begged me to say yes, told me it would secure our family's position in the clan, but I could not do it. So they cast you out. The chief gave me a choice: marry his son or leave. I left. Grisha stared into the fire. My family did not speak to me again. I was dead to them. I am sorry, Isaac said quietly. Do not be. I would make the same choice again. She glanced at him. That is why the rule matters so much to me. I have seen what happens when a woman has no power to protect herself. I needed to know that you would not be like him. I am not, Isaac said firmly, and I never will be. Grisha smiled, a small expression that softened her fierce features. I believe you. As the weeks passed, the farm began to transform. The barn roof was repaired. The fields were cleared and plowed. They planted late-season crops and expanded the vegetable garden. Grisha built a better chicken coop, and Isaac bought a dozen more hens. They fell into a rhythm of work and rest, meals and conversation that felt almost natural. But Isaac was becoming increasingly aware of something else, an attraction he had not anticipated. He found himself noticing things about Grisha. The way she laughed at his terrible jokes, the grace in her movements despite her size, the softness in her eyes when she talked about things she cared about. She was beautiful in a way he had never expected, and the realization left him feeling confused and guilty. She was not his wife. She was someone he had bought, someone who had no choice but to be here. Any feelings he had were inappropriate, even if she seemed happy. He tried to push the thoughts away to focus on the work, but it became harder each day. One evening in early summer, they were sitting outside on the porch steps, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Grisha had been quieter than usual all day, and Isaac finally asked what was wrong. Nothing is wrong, she said. I was just thinking about how strange this is. What do you mean? I have been here almost 2 months. You have kept your word about everything. You treat me with respect. You ask my opinion. You share your food and your home. She turned to look at him. Why, you could have demanded anything from me. You bought me. By the laws of the borderlands, I am your property, but you do not act like I am. Isaac shifted uncomfortably. Because you are not. You are a person, Grisha. What happened at that camp, it was wrong. I cannot change that. But I can make sure you are treated properly while you are here. While I am here. Grisha's voice had gone very quiet. You plan to send me away. What? No. Isaac turned to face her fully. That is not what I meant. I do not want you to feel trapped. If you ever want to leave, if you ever find somewhere better to go, I would not stop you. Grisha was silent for a long moment. And if I do not want to leave, then you can stay as long as you like. Even if staying means something more than just working together. The question was barely above a whisper. Isaac's heart began to pound. What are you saying? Grisha stood abruptly, her hands clenched at her sides. I am saying that I am a fool. I told myself I would not let this happen. You are human, I am Orc. There is no future in this, but I cannot help how I feel, and I hope that you feel it too. Isaac stood as well, his mind racing. Grisha, I do. God help me, I do, but I do not want you to feel obligated because of how we met. I do not want you to think you have to. Do you think I would say this if I felt obligated? Grisha's voice was fierce now. I am not some delicate human girl who cannot speak her own mind. I am telling you that I care for you, Isaac Thorn. I am telling you that when I imagine a future, you are in it, and I am asking if you feel the same." Isaac closed the distance between them in 2 steps. He reached up and gently cupped her face in his hands, feeling the warmth of her green skin, seeing the hope and fear in her amber eyes. "I feel the same," he said. "I have been trying not to because I thought it was wrong of me, but I care about you, Grisha, more than I know how to say." She leaned down and he stretched up, and their lips met in a kiss that was awkward and perfect, and everything Isaac had not known he was waiting for. Grisha's arms came around him, careful of her strength, and he held her as tightly as he dared. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. "So what do we do now?" Isaac asked. "I do not know," Grisha admitted. "In my clan, if 2 people wanted to be together, they would announce it to the chief and have their union blessed, but I am cast out and you are human. There is no tradition for this." "Then we make our own tradition," Isaac said. He took her hands in his. "Grisha, will you marry me? Not because of any contract or purchase, but because I love you and I want to spend my life with you." Tears welled up in Grisha's eyes. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." They held each other on the porch as the stars came out, making quiet plans for a future neither of them had thought possible. The next day, Isaac went into the village to find someone who would perform a marriage ceremony for a human and an orc. It was not easy. The first 3 clergy members he asked refused outright, looking at him like he had lost his mind. The 4th, an elderly priestess named Mother Hadley who ran a small shrine on the edge of town, listened to his story with thoughtful eyes. "You love her?" Mother Hadley asked. "I do." "And she loves you," she says she does. Mother Hadley sighed. "People will not approve, you know that, yes. They will call you a monster lover. They will say you have betrayed your own kind." "I know." Isaac met her gaze steadily. "But I am not asking for their approval. I am asking you to marry us." The old priestess smiled. "Then I will do it. Bring her here tomorrow at sunset, and I will bless your union. Love is rare enough in this world. I will not refuse it just because it looks different than expected." Isaac could have kissed her. Instead, he thanked her profusely and hurried back to the farm to tell Grisha. The wedding was small and simple. Just Isaac, Grisha, and Mother Hadley in the shrine at sunset. Grisha wore a new dress that Isaac had bought in the village, dark green fabric that brought out the richness of her skin tone. Isaac wore his father's old formal coat, brushed clean and mended. Mother Hadley spoke words about love and commitment, about choosing each other every day, about building a life together through joy and hardship. She blessed them in the name of the old gods and the new, and she pronounced them husband and wife. When Isaac kissed Grisha this time, it felt different, permanent, real in a way that made his chest feel too full. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I love you too," she whispered back. They walked home hand in hand as the summer stars came out above them. The farmhouse that had been so empty and lonely now felt warm and full of possibility. They were married. Against all odds and expectations, they had found each other and chosen each other, and nothing else mattered. That night, they consummated their marriage gently and carefully, learning each other's bodies, speaking in soft murmurs and shared laughter. Afterward, they lay tangled together in Isaac's bed, their bed now, and talked until they fell asleep. The next few months were perhaps the happiest of Isaac's life. The farm thrived under their combined efforts. The late crops came in better than expected. They sold the surplus at market and finally, for the first time in years, had money left over after paying expenses. They bought 2 more cows and a young ox to help with plowing. They repaired the fence around the property. They painted the house, but more than the physical improvements, there was joy. Isaac woke up every morning next to his wife and felt grateful. They worked together during the day, often pausing to steal kisses or exchange private jokes. In the evenings, they would cook dinner together, Grisha teaching Isaac orc recipes and Isaac sharing his mother's old human dishes. They created something new together, a blend of both their cultures. Of course, not everything was perfect. The villagers' reactions to their marriage ranged from disapproval to outright hostility. More than once, Isaac went to market and was refused service or spat at. Children threw rocks at Grisha when she accompanied him. People who had known Isaac his whole life now crossed the street to avoid him. It hurt, but Isaac tried not to let it show. He had known this would happen. He had chosen Grisha anyway, and he did not regret it. Grisha, for her part, seemed more amused than hurt by the humans' behavior. "They fear what they do not understand," she told Isaac one night after a particularly unpleasant market trip. "Let them whisper. We know the truth of what we have." But Isaac could see that the isolation bothered her more than she let on. She had been cast out by her own clan, and now she was rejected by humans too. She had nowhere she truly belonged except here on this farm with him. He wished he could give her more. A community. Friends. A place where she could walk without people staring or whispering. But he did not know how to create that. The situation came to a head one autumn morning when Isaac went outside to find their barn on fire. He shouted for Grisha and ran to the well, hauling up buckets of water. Grisha appeared within seconds, and together they fought the flames, desperately trying to save the animals inside. They managed to get the cows and the ox out, but by the time the fire was extinguished, half the barn had been destroyed. They stood in the smoking ruins, covered in soot and ash, staring at the destruction. "This was not an accident," Grisha said quietly. "Look." She pointed to the remains of a torch near the barn entrance. "Someone did this deliberately." Isaac felt cold despite the heat still radiating from the smoldering wood. "The villagers, probably." Grisha's voice was carefully neutral. "They want to drive us out, or at least drive me out." "They can go to hell," Isaac said fiercely. "This is our land, our home. They do not get to take it from us." "Isaac, no, I am not letting them win. We will rebuild." He turned to her, taking her hands. "I will not lose you, not to them, not to anyone." Grisha's expression softened. "I am not going anywhere, but we need to be careful. If they are willing to burn the barn, they might try something worse." She was right, and Isaac knew it. They spent the rest of the day salvaging what they could from the barn and moving the animals to a temporary shelter. Isaac's mind raced with plans for rebuilding, for protecting the farm, for keeping Grisha safe. That evening, as they sat exhausted by the fire, there was a knock at the door. Isaac answered it cautiously, expecting more trouble. Instead, he found Mother Hadley standing on his porch, along with two other people. He did not recognize a middle-aged human man and a young orc woman. "May we come in?" Mother Hadley asked. Isaac glanced at Grisha, who nodded. He stepped aside to let the visitors enter. "I heard about the fire," Mother Hadley said without preamble, "and I am ashamed of what my fellow humans have done. I have come to offer help and to introduce you to some people who might become allies." The human man stepped forward. He was tall and weathered, with kind eyes. "My name is Garrett Wells. I own a farm about 10 miles north of here. This is my wife, Nara." He gestured to the orc woman beside him. Nara had lighter green skin than Grisha and slightly larger tusks. She smiled shyly. "We heard that another human and orc couple lived in the valley. We wanted to meet you, but we were afraid. When Mother Hadley told us what happened, we knew we had to come." Isaac felt something loosen in his chest. "You are married too?" "For 3 years now," Garrett said. "We keep to ourselves mostly. It is easier that way. But when Hadley told us about you too, we thought, well, maybe it does not have to be so lonely." Grisha had stood and was staring at Nara with an expression Isaac had never seen before. "You are orc. You married a human willingly." "I did," Nara said. "I was injured during the war. Garrett found me and nursed me back to health. We fell in love." She shrugged. "My clan disowned me when I refused to return, but I do not regret it." "Neither do I," Grisha said softly. Mother Hadley smiled. "I have been thinking. There are probably others like you in the borderlands. Couples who fell in love across the divide who are hiding or struggling alone. What if we found them? What if we created a community where such unions were not just tolerated but celebrated?" "Is that even possible?" Isaac asked. "I do not know," Mother Hadley admitted. "But I think it is worth trying. The war is over. The peace is fragile, but it exists. Perhaps it is time for something new." They talked long into the night, making plans. Garrett and Nara would help Isaac and Grisha rebuild the barn. Mother Hadley would discreetly reach out to other mixed couples she had heard rumors about. They would start small, just a network of people who could support each other, but maybe it would grow into something more. For the first time since the fire, Isaac felt hope. They were not alone. There were others like them, others who had chosen love over fear, and together they might actually build something better. Over the next few months, the little community began to take shape. Garrett and Nara kept their word about helping rebuild the barn, and they brought 2 other mixed couples with them. There was James, a human blacksmith, and his orc wife Kara. There was also a human woman named Laura Whitman who had married an orc named Drog. Working together, they rebuilt Isaac's barn in a matter of weeks. But more than that, they formed friendships. For the first time since their marriage, Grisha had friends, other orc women who understood what she had been through, who shared her experiences. Isaac had people he could talk to who did not judge him for his choice. They began meeting regularly, gathering at different farms for meals and conversation. The children of the mixed couples played together. They shared resources, helped each other with harvests, and protected each other from hostile neighbors. Mother Hadley acted as a sort of informal leader, helping to mediate disputes and organizing their efforts. She had found her calling in supporting these unlikely families, and she threw herself into the work with joy. One winter evening, as all the families gathered at Isaac and Grisha's farm for a celebration, Isaac looked around the crowded room and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. There was laughter and music, the smell of cooking food, children racing between the adults' legs. Grisha was in the corner talking animatedly with Nara and Kara, her face lit up with happiness. "You have done well," Mother Hadley said, appearing at Isaac's elbow. "We all have," Isaac corrected. "This would not exist without you. It would not exist without you and Grisha being brave enough to love each other openly," Mother Hadley said. "You gave the rest of us something to believe in." Isaac shook his head. "We were just trying to survive. That is how all great things start." The old priestess smiled. "Mark my words, Isaac Thorn, what you have started here will spread. Give it time." She was right, though Isaac did not fully believe it at the time. Over the next year, more mixed couples came out of hiding and joined their little community. Some were human-orc marriages like Isaac and Grisha's. Others were different combinations, humans who had fallen in love with elves, dwarves who had married humans, even a few humans who had bonded with fey folk. The community grew from a dozen people to 50, then to nearly 100. They called themselves the Borderland Alliance, and they began to attract attention beyond just the local villages. Not all of the attention was positive. There were attempts to break them up, to arrest people for violating old anti-miscegenation laws that technically still existed in some regions. But Mother Hadley had connections, and she used them ruthlessly. She got the attention of progressive nobles, reform-minded clergy, and even some military leaders who had served alongside non-humans during the war and knew they were not monsters. Slowly, painfully, attitudes began to shift. The Borderland Alliance became a symbol of the new peace, a sign that the old hatreds did not have to define the future. 2 years after their marriage, Grisha told Isaac she was pregnant. He stood frozen in the kitchen, a dish towel in his hands, trying to process what she had just said. "Pregnant?" he finally managed. "Yes." Grisha was watching him carefully. "I know this is unexpected. The midwife said it should not be possible for humans and orcs to have children together, but apparently we are the exception." Isaac dropped the towel and crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling Grisha into his arms. "This is wonderful," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We are going to have a baby." Grisha laughed, a sound of pure relief. "You are happy." "I am terrified and thrilled and so incredibly happy," Isaac said. He pulled back to look at her. "Are you all right? Is everything okay with the baby?" The midwife says everything is normal so far, though she has no idea what normal means for a half-human, half-orc child. Grisha's hand went to her still flat stomach. "We are going into unknown territory." "We have been in unknown territory since the day I met you," Isaac pointed out. "We will figure this out too." The pregnancy was difficult. Grisha was sick more than the midwife expected, and she grew tired easily, which frustrated her to no end. But Isaac was there every step of the way, taking over more of the farm work, making sure she rested, holding her hair back when she was ill in the mornings. The other families in the alliance rallied around them as well. Nara, who had given birth to a daughter the previous year, shared advice and hand-me-down baby clothes. Kara helped prepare the nursery. The men built a cradle. When Grisha went into labor on a cold spring night, half the alliance showed up at the farm to wait anxiously for news. The birth was long and hard, and there were moments when Isaac feared he would lose both Grisha and the baby. But the midwife was skilled and Grisha was incredibly strong, and finally, just as dawn was breaking, their daughter was born. She was tiny and perfect, with green-tinted skin a shade lighter than Grisha's and small nubs where tusks would eventually grow. She had Isaac's dark hair and eyes the color of honey, halfway between Grisha's amber and Isaac's brown. When she opened her mouth to cry, the sound was the most beautiful thing Isaac had ever heard. "She is perfect," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "She is ours," Grisha said, exhausted but beaming. "What should we name her?" They had discussed names during the pregnancy, but now, looking at his daughter's face, Isaac knew exactly what her name should be. "Hope," he said. "We should name her Hope." Grisha smiled. "Hope Thorn, I like it." Little Hope became the darling of the alliance. She was the first child born to a human-orc couple in anyone's memory, proof that their unions could create new life. People came from miles around just to see her, to marvel at this symbol of a better future. As Hope grew, she was surrounded by love from dozens of people who saw her as precious and special. She learned to walk with Nara's daughter toddling beside her. She learned to talk in a mixture of human and orcish languages. She was beautiful and curious and fearless, the perfect blend of both her parents. Isaac and Grisha's farm continued to prosper. With so many helping hands in the alliance, they were able to expand their operations, buying more land and livestock. Isaac taught Hope to care for the animals, and Grisha taught her the old orc songs and stories. Mother Hadley remained a constant presence in their lives, officiating at weddings and naming ceremonies, mediating disputes, and advocating for the alliance in the wider world. She lived to see the day when the provincial government officially recognized mixed marriages, a victory that made her weep with joy. By the time Hope was 5 years old, The Borderland Alliance had grown into a thriving community of over 200 families. They had built their own village on land purchased collectively, with houses for everyone and common buildings for gatherings. The village was named Hadley's Rest, in honor of the old priestess who had made it all possible. Isaac and Grisha kept their original farm, but they spent more and more time in the village, helping to organize and build. Isaac had somehow become one of the unofficial leaders of the alliance, a position he had never sought but accepted because people trusted him. One evening, sitting on their porch and watching Hope play in the yard, Grisha leaned her head on Isaac's shoulder. "You ever think about that day at the trading camp?" she asked. "Sometimes," Isaac admitted. "I think about how close I came to not going, to just giving up on everything." "I think about it too. I was so hopeless that day. I thought my life was over, that I would be sold to someone cruel or simply die in that camp." She squeezed his hand. "And then you came along and changed everything." "You changed everything," Isaac corrected. "You made me believe that things could get better, that I did not have to be alone." "We saved each other," Grisha said softly. Isaac could not argue with that. He pulled her closer, breathing in the familiar scent of her, feeling the warmth of her body against his. In the yard, Hope was chasing a chicken, laughing with pure joy. This was his life now. A wife he loved, a daughter who was his whole heart, a community of people who had become family. It was so much more than he had ever dreamed possible. "I love you," he said to Grisha. "I love you too," she replied. They sat together as the sun set, watching their daughter play, and Isaac thought about all the ways one desperate choice had led to this moment. He had gone to that trading camp with nothing but 40 silver coins and a dying farm. He had bought a wife because he had no other options. And somehow, impossibly, that terrible decision had become the best thing he had ever done, because he had not just bought a wife that day. He had found a partner, a friend, a love that had changed not just his future but the future of everyone around them. Grisha's strange rule had forced him to be a better man, to treat her with respect and kindness, and that had been the foundation of everything good that followed. The loneliness was gone now, replaced by love and laughter and more family than he knew what to do with. The struggling farm had become prosperous. The isolated life had become a community. And it had all started with one orc woman who had the courage to demand respect, and one desperate farmer who had the decency to give it to her. Years continued to pass, and the story of Isaac and Grisha Thorn became something of a legend in the Borderlands. People told it to illustrate that love could bridge any divide, that courage and kindness could change the world. Young mixed couples who were struggling would come to visit the farm, to seek advice from the couple who had started it all. Isaac always welcomed them, shared his story, and gave whatever wisdom he could. But he always made sure to tell them the same thing. It will not be easy. People will hate you for loving each other. There will be days when you question whether it is worth it. But if you truly love each other, if you treat each other with respect and kindness, you can build something beautiful. We did, and you can too. Grisha would usually add, and never compromise on your boundaries. Know what you need to feel safe and loved and demand it. Any relationship built on fear or disrespect will crumble. Ours has lasted because we built it on a foundation of mutual care. Hope grew into a strong, intelligent young woman who moved easily between human and orc cultures. She learned farming from Isaac and fighting from Grisha. She studied with Mother Hadley and trained with the Alliance's mixed-species militia. By the time she was 16, she had become a bridge between communities herself, using her unique heritage to bring people together. The farm that had once been dying was now one of the most successful in the region. Isaac and Grisha employed several families, both human and orc, and they shared the profits fairly. They had expanded into breeding special livestock animals adapted to thrive in the borderland's harsh climate. Their innovations spread to other farms, helping the whole region prosper. Mother Hadley lived to see the 10th anniversary of the Borderland Alliance, a celebration attended by over 1,000 people from across the provinces. She gave a speech that day, talking about how proud she was of what they had all built together, how love had proven stronger than hate. She died peacefully in her sleep 2 weeks later, surrounded by the families she had helped bring together. The entire alliance mourned her, and they built a statue in the center of Hadley's rest. Mother Hadley with her arms outstretched, welcoming everyone home. Isaac and Grisha were in their 40s when the regional governor came to visit. He arrived with a small escort and a formal request. Would they be willing to advise the provincial government on integration policies? Their alliance had proven that humans and non-humans could not only coexist, but thrive together. The government wanted to replicate that success on a larger scale. It was a huge responsibility, but after discussing it, Isaac and Grisha agreed. They began traveling to the provincial capital several times a year, sharing what they had learned, helping to craft new laws and policies that protected mixed families and encouraged integration. The work was frustrating at times. Politicians moved slowly, and there was still significant opposition to change. But gradually, they saw progress. More mixed marriages were recognized, discriminatory laws were repealed. Towns and cities began creating their own smaller versions of the alliance, safe spaces where diverse families could live without fear. Through it all, Isaac and Grisha remained grounded in their farm and their community. They never forgot where they had started or how close they had come to losing everything. Every night, they would return home and sit on their porch, holding hands and watching the sunset, grateful for the life they had built. Hope eventually married a young man from the alliance, a human named Marcus, whose parents were both human but who had grown up celebrating the mixing of cultures. They had 3 children of their own, and Isaac and Grisha delighted in being grandparents. On their 20th wedding anniversary, the alliance threw them a huge celebration. People came from all over the borderlands, many of whom they had helped over the years. There were speeches and toasts, music and dancing, stories and laughter. At the height of the celebration, Isaac pulled Grisha aside for a moment alone. They stood at the edge of the gathering, watching all the people who had become family. 20 years, Isaac said wonderingly. It feels like both forever and no time at all. I know what you mean, Grisha replied. She turned to face him, taking both his hands in hers. Thank you, Isaac. For what? For seeing me when others only saw a monster, for treating me with kindness when you could have treated me as property, for loving me when the world said it was wrong. Her amber eyes were bright with emotion. For giving me a home, a family, a future I never thought I could have. Isaac felt his throat tighten. I should be thanking you. You saved me, Grisha. I was drowning in loneliness and failure, and you gave me hope. You made me better. You gave me more than I ever deserved. We saved each other, Grisha said, echoing what she had said so many years ago. That is what love does. They kissed as the celebration continued around them, 2 people who had found each other against impossible odds and built something extraordinary. As they grew older, Isaac and Grisha gradually stepped back from their advisory roles and focused more on the farm and their family. They watched their grandchildren grow, taught them everything they had learned, and told them stories about the early days of the alliance. The world continued to change. Mixed marriages became more common and more accepted. The borderlands, once a place of tension and violence, became known as a model of integration and cooperation. And at the heart of it all was the little farm where a desperate human man and a cast-out orc woman had dared to build a life together. On a warm summer evening, 30 years after they first met, Isaac and Grisha sat on their porch as they had done thousands of times before. They were in their 60s now, their bodies slower and their hair gray, but their love was as strong as ever. "Do you have any regrets?" Isaac asked, a question he had never voiced before. Grisha was quiet for a long moment, considering. "I regret that it took being sold like livestock for me to find you. I regret the pain my family caused by casting me out. I regret that we had to fight so hard just to live in peace." She squeezed his hand. "But I do not regret choosing you. I would do it all again in a heartbeat." "So would I," Isaac said. He looked out at the farm, at the fields they had tended together for 3 decades, at the home they had built. "We made something good here." "We did," Grisha agreed, "and it will outlast us. Hope will carry it forward, and her children and their children. What we started will continue." Isaac nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. They had done what they set out to do. They had survived. They had built a life together. They had helped create a community where love mattered more than species, where families like theirs could exist without fear. It was more than enough. It was everything. As the stars came out above them, Isaac and Grisha sat together in comfortable silence. Two souls who had found each other in the darkest of circumstances and created light. The lonely farmer who had spent his last coins on a desperate gamble. The cast-out orc who had demanded respect and found love. Together, they had changed the world, one small act of kindness at a time, and their story would be told for generations to come, a reminder that even in the darkest times hope could be found, that love could bridge any divide, that one person's courage could inspire countless others, that the smallest choices could have the largest consequences. The farm stood as a testament to their love, and the alliance stood as proof of what was possible when people dared to see beyond their differences. Children grew up hearing about Isaac and Grisha Thorn, about the strange rule that had seemed so simple but had been the foundation of everything good that followed. Never touch in anger. Always show respect. Choose kindness over cruelty. Build together rather than tearing apart. These were the lessons their life together had taught, and they rippled out into the world, changing hearts and minds one person at a time. Isaac and Grisha lived out their days surrounded by love and family, working the land they both cherished, secure in the knowledge that their legacy would endure. They had found each other when both were lost, and together they had built something neither could have achieved alone. It was a love story for the ages, not because it was easy or perfect, but because it was real, because two people from different worlds had looked at each other and chosen to build a bridge rather than a wall, because they had treated each other with the respect and dignity every person deserves, regardless of their species or background, and in the end, that was the real magic. Not destiny or fate, but choice. The choice to love, the choice to be kind, the choice to see the person rather than the monster, the choice to build rather than destroy. Isaac and Grisha Thorn made those choices every day for 30 years, and in doing so, they changed not just their own future but the future of everyone around them. The lonely farmer who bought an orc wife found that her one strange rule was not strange at all. It was the most basic requirement for any relationship worth having: respect, kindness, safety, love. These were the things that mattered, the things that lasted, the things that made life worth living. And as Isaac and Grisha sat together on their porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors, they knew they had found all of them. Together, they had built a future neither could have imagined, all because one desperate man had been willing to listen, and one brave woman had been willing to hope. Their story had a happy ending, but more importantly, it had a beginning that continued to ripple forward in their daughter, their grandchildren, the alliance, and the countless lives they had touched. The lonely farmer and the orc wife had become legends, but they were also just Isaac and Grisha, two people who had found love in an unlikely place and nurtured it into something that changed the world. And that, in the end, was the greatest magic of all.